Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're listening on TorahAnytime.com or wherever you listen to your podcast or watch your podcast, it's so nice to have you along with us. And this week, obviously, is a little more mellow. It's already Rosh Chodesh Av. And the Gemara tells us, there is a lessening of our simcha. I have to point out that in Pirkei Avos, when it talks about the Memchas Dvarim, the 48 things that you need to be Kohen Torah, there's a whole bunch of miyat chaik, miyat sicha, etc. And the Mefarshim point out that miyat means you limit, not that you remove. A Jew can't live without simcha. And there's always something of a dichotomy. Somebody pointed out that they were on their way to a levaya, and it was a particularly tragic levaya. And they said, Tefillah Sederach. And it says that they should come, should arrive at your destination, b'simcha b'shalom. So he says, b'simcha? I'm going to a levaya. And the answer is that a human being is capable of a multitude of emotions. I can be pained for where I'm going, but happy that I got there alive. At least I got there alive. There's always more than one emotion that has to go into a person's makeup. People are complicated. Life is complicated. I'll never forget. I was teaching in Or Sameach, and there was a terrorist attack at one of the yeshuvim, and there was a fellow in the shir who lived on this yeshuv, and he went to the levaya, and that night one of the guys from the shir were supposed to be getting married, and he said to me, how am I supposed to go from this funeral to this chasana? And I said that if you let them take our simcha from us, then they've won. And listen, when you're a rabbi of a congregation, you're a rabbi of a community, you go from a bris to a levaya to a chasana. You go back and forth among these different experiences. This almana went to see Reb Moshe Feinstein and had a terrible, terrible tale of woe. And these guys were supposed to go in and speak to Reb Moshe, and they were sure that he was going to be, tzibrochen, he was going to be a broken person after this terrible, terrible story. And he comes in, and Reb Moshe looks like he has an equilibrium to him. So they say, Rebbe, how are you not broken from that? He says, you can't live your life that way. There's going to be a part of yourself that you have to understand. This part I'm saving for myself. So, Kishenichnas ab mamatim b'simcha means that we have to limit the simcha, but it doesn't mean that we eliminate it. Yeah, it doesn't mean that there's nothing there. Even among the pain, one has to be able to see the simcha. One has to be able to appreciate the good that's going on. Yeah. When David is running away from his son Avshalom, who's turned most of the country against him, and his own son is coming to kill him, and he writes a mizmor, writes a song, not a kinnah, he writes a song, because he looks at the good. The Sanhedrin's going with me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hasn't abandoned me. There's still this. I can still see simcha in the tragedy. So as we go into Av, we understand that this is the darkest time of the Jewish year. It's the reality to it, and that has halachic implications. But I have to ma'atim b'simcha. I still have to be able to maintain myself that, it can be worse. There's always another level if I stop to look at the Chasdei Hashem and you realize where I am. Yasa Yasrani Ka L'Mavas L'Nasanani. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was giving me lots of Yisurim, but I'm still alive. I'm still here. And I tell the story all the time. I had a heart attack, and I had a bypass operation, and 2 major doctors told me I was supposed to be dead. So when people ask me, how you doing? And I said, I woke up this morning, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm living on borrowed time. You can't really complain that much. And so you turn around, and it's amazing. It's amazing that we're able to turn around and say, through all the tragedy and all the difficulties and everything that we've gone through, we're still here. We're still here. And all those people throughout history have tried to destroy us are gone, and we're still here. Nonetheless, the same way we bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the good, we have to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the bad. And there'll come a time when we'll realize that even the bad was really good, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. That in the future. In the future, when foxes walk out of the Kosher Kedoshim and Rabbi Akiva laughs, there'll come a time when we'll be able to look at the tragedy and have seen the simcha in the midst of the tragedy, but we're not there. So we have no choice. You mourn at a funeral. You mourn during the 9 days. These are Yemei Avelus. And there's 2 different aspects to Avelus. There's 2 different aspects. We don't wear shoes on Tisha B'Av, and Oval doesn't wear shoes. We don't cut our hair. So, those are aspects not just of a person who's in mourning. Those are aspects of a person who are benidui, the becherim. When you put into cherim, and today the term is thrown around, it doesn't have the halachic intensity that it always has throughout history. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, of whom it says, if you put all the Chacham on one side and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus on the other side, he would machriyas kulam. He would decide that everybody. He had a position. The majority voted against him. He refused to change his position. They put him into cherem. And he walked off the stage of Jewish history, and he was benidui. He was in cherem till the end of his life. It's an amazing thing. He accepted it. He accepted it because he understood that for the good of the Jewish people, you have no choice sometimes. You have to be able to hold everything together. It was a critical time. It could have broken into 2 different movements. This has happened. Anan ben David got turned down for the position as Rosh Yeshiva in Bavel, so he started the Karaites, started the Karaim, went into business for himself. This was a split in Klal Yisrael, the likes of which we can't even imagine today. It just split the Jewish people apart. It's a terrible thing, and we had to do all kinds of things to counter this movement. Eventually they died out as all aberrant movements do, but Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus understood that he could end up coming up with an alternative Judaism, and he walked off the stage. So when a person is in mourning, we understand that there's a din. It didn't happen by bad luck. It wasn't the forces of history. It wasn't like I heard one person say about a tragedy in their life, God has played a cruel trick. God doesn't play tricks. The Greek gods play tricks. God doesn't play tricks. When a tragedy happens, we have to understand that ultimately there's a message in it for us. And yeah, there are consequences. So during this week, there are regulations, right? I'm speaking Ashkenazim because by Sephardim it's Shvur Shechalbo, and it's a whole different thing. But certainly for us Ashkenazim, we don't eat meat, we don't drink wine. We, of course, don't listen to music. We don't wear freshly laundered clothes. We don't bathe for pleasure. And all of these things a person has to, obviously I'm not here to be a halachic consultant. You got to speak to your Rabbanim and see how it works, because there's so many variations. Things have changed so much. There was a time when people used to take a bath once a week, Saturday night to take a bath. That was how it went. Otherwise, people didn't bathe all the time. Today, when people bathe at least once a day, sometimes twice, it could be a different situation. I'm not paskening. There are some people who during the 9 days do not change their undergarments. I have sat next to these people on a bus, and I can testify. And I understand. Other people are makbid just pressed suits as opposed to laundered suits, whatever. Again, I'm not here to talk about it. I'm talking about the fact that for a week, there's a week of restrictions that go on. And for some people, it's too much. There are restaurants in America where every hour they would make a siyum, and so they could eat fleishiks. And, okay, could be that people just can't go without a steak dinner. They have to go out to a restaurant, have a steak dinner, participate in a quasi-siyum. They just can't handle it. The flip side is I heard these two ladies talking, and they said, "Oh, my husband looks forward to the 9 days. He likes milchiks." There's something wrong there. There's something wrong. If I'm looking forward to the 9 days, but this is a problem where when I was growing up, you went to shul Tisha B'Av morning, and they had those little paper kinnis, and they were hard to read, and they were blurry, and they were offset 19 times. You know what I mean? And it was hard to read, and the Aramaic was difficult, and and you're sitting on the floor. And the reason they were that way is because the minhag used to be that you'd leave your kinnis in shul, because I don't need it for next year. Just leave it in shul. Now you could buy hard-covered kinnis with perushim, with your name on it. So there's a phenomena that, let's face it, the average person does not get out of sitting on the floor and saying kinnis that they don't really understand. They don't get so much out of it. So 30 years ago, there weren't many places that did this, but Rabbi Lev and Moshav Matasyahu used to give an explanatory kinnis. Now, evidently, this was something they did in Telz, because I know Rabbi Foya used to do this in his shul in Monsey. They both went to Telz. And they would explain what the kinnah was about, and then they would say the kinnah, and they would explain it. So you wouldn't go through too many kinnas, but they were much more meaningful. Eventually, we started such a program in Har Nof and other places. And 1 year, I shouldn't say it was 1 year, on more than one occasion, more than a person said to me, that was the most meaningful Tisha B'Av I ever had. I can't wait till next year. There's something wrong there. If we're looking forward to Tisha B'Av because it's so meaningful. So 1 year Rabbi Lev said it, and I often repeat it over in his name because it made such an impression on me. He said, I hate Tisha B'Av. I hate it. And when we hate it enough, it won't be around anymore. But the fact of the matter is that most people, it's okay. So I eat milchiks for a week, you know what I mean? And make sure and put on my suits for whatever amount of time it is beforehand, and I can work around, and not so bad. Given a choice between that and doing tshuva, it's okay. I'll suffer for a week. It's not so bad. I'll sit on the floor for a week. Yeah, rather than to remove from ourselves the sinas chinam, rather than to stop speaking lashon hara, rather than to remove all of these obstacles from us being able to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The nidui means that Tisha B'Av says to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is upset with us. He's upset with us. I mentioned this a few podcasts ago. Yeah, Abraham saw Har Moriah as a mountain, and Yitzchak saw it as a soda, and Yaakov saw it as a bayis. A bayis is a home where a husband and a wife live. 5 tragedies happened on Tisha B'Av. One of them was Tanis Rufus plowed the Har Bayis like a field. Okay, they wiped out the city of Beitar. So many people were killed that the blood flowed like a river. And he plowed the Har Bayis. What he was saying is, you don't have a bias anymore. You only have a soda. You don't have that home where you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will live together. That's what the Beis HaMikdash was. It was us together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu with an intimate relationship. We don't have that anymore. That's what Tisha B'Av is. Mrs. Gila Mandelson had written a book many years ago called The Magic Touch, about the idea of, the Isser of Negi, of men and women touching each other. And she starts with a story which I found particularly poignant. And she says, I was just coming back to Judaism, and I went to the Western Wall, I went to the Kaisel, and I saw everything that was going on, and I couldn't understand it, I couldn't relate to it. And I sat down, and I started to cry over all the broken relationships. And I thought to myself, what a poignant observation of Tisha B'Av. That is Tisha B'Av. All of the broken relationships between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't have the bias anymore. There's been a break. And that intimacy between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been lost. That's what we go into this week. There's a nidui. There's a chayrim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm upset with you. I don't care whether you find it. If your parents send you to your room, it doesn't matter whether or not you have a nice time in your room or not. What makes it sad is that my parents are sending me away. They don't want me to be here. That's painful. It's painful. And if I understand that, then I want to rebuild that relationship. If I broke that trust, I want to rebuild that trust. If I broke that closeness, that's the nidui. We walk around barefoot. The fact that we fast, that's different. That's on a level of understanding that there's a certain amount of suffering. Not eating meat and wine, it's a certain amount of suffering. But the fact that I don't have that closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I feel distance. We used to go to the Beis HaMikdash, and it was a level of experience where you could feel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could feel the divine presence. It was real. Anshe Nesek Gedola. The last of the Anshe Gedola was Shimon HaTzadik. And he meets with Alexander the Great. And Rav Moshe Shapiro explained once. Why? Because the last body that had nevuah, that had prophecy, that was the Anshe Nesek Gedola. And when it ended, then the Greeks come on. And the word atheism is a Greek word. Theo is God, ism is belief in, and a is not, like asymmetrical or atypical. Atheist is I don't believe in God. But you couldn't do that when there was nevuah. Shavtamayim b'sasoim, when the kedusha, the Ruach HaKodesh came out of the Beis HaMikdash, you couldn't deny HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. Everyone could see it. Everyone could feel it. The taiva then was avodah zarah, to look for spirituality in the wrong places. But that it existed, that wasn't a question. But once that was gone, so now we're left with a situation where who says we're right? Who says HaKadosh Baruch Hu still cares about us? Why do the Jewish people think they're special? Why is the Torah special? All these things come in. Why? Because we're not there. If you're with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you have that experience, there's nothing to talk about. So we go into the 9 days, which is a process of us understanding that there is a distance between us and Hashem. And we have to bridge that gap. But in order to bridge the gap, there used to be these light bulb jokes. How many of this does it take to change a light bulb? How many of that does it take to change a light bulb? Fill in whichever group you want. How many Jewish grandmothers does it take to change a light bulb? No, sit in the dark. Right? There's all these different things. So one of them was, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but only if the light bulb wants to change. It wasn't cute when the Kotzka said, when they asked the Kotzka, when is Mashiach going to come? And he said, whenever we want it. We have to want it. We have to want it. So it was interesting. I'm quoting again Rabbi Laff. He said, Yom Kippur is one day in Olam Haba. Because what does the Gemara say? Olam Haba, and Achila, and Shtia, and Masav Matan, in Tashba Shemitah. There's none of the physicality. Rak tzadikim yoshvim batrosem b'rosheim. Tzadikim sitting with their crowns, enjoying the light of the Shekhinah. That's Yom Kippur. We fast because angels don't eat. We dress in white because we're like angels. We stand as much as we can because angels don't have any knees. They can't sit down. They're always standing. They're always moving. We're like angels. Say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam out loud. Olam Haba is one day in Olam Haba, Yom Kippur. He says Tisha B'Av is one day in Gehenna. Tisha B'Av is one day it's in hell. There's also no eating. There's also no drinking. There's none of those things. There's also no learning Torah. Because you're devoid of the Ruchnius. We take away the spirituality and say, so how do you like it? There's going to come a time in your life when there's no more physicality. And, you start to get older, you start to appreciate this more. Yeah, the physicality of life cannot be enjoyed as much. And you slowly start moving away from all of these things. And you say to yourself, so what is important? And have one day where you say, I have nothing. I have no ruchnias in my life. Which is such a sad thing. There are people who at some point wake up and look at their life and see there's nothing. Some people don't know what to do with it. Hinei yomim ba'im, v'hishlachti ra'av ba'aretz. Days are coming and I will send a famine. Lo ra'av lo lechem v'lo tzoma l'mayim, kiyim l'shmo es divrei Hashem. Not a hunger for bread or a thirst for water, but a hunger for the words of God. That's great, right? No. Because a starving person will eat anything. And people start looking any place they can. I'm on a plane where I'm sitting next to this Israeli businessman, middle-aged. He's on his way to India to join his wife, who's in an ashram where they're studying Buddhism and meditation. I said, did you consider Judaism? He says, nah, Judaism is about doing mitzvot. I'm looking for spirituality. He's starving. He's starving. He'll look any place he can find it. People aren't so discriminating. So there's this during the 9 days. This is the time when we're supposed to focus on that richuk. Ma'atim b'simcha. Kadosh Baruch Hu is distant from us. He's not a part of our lives. And so if we can understand that, then we understand that the purpose is to repair that relationship. And that's what the Beis HaMikdash was. Ki'ish u'isha. Right? And that's the Yud from Ish. And the Hey from Isha, the Yud K, the 15. The Beis HaMikdash, there were 15 steps leading up. It was the place where we and a HaKadosh Baruch Hu joined together like an Isha and Isha, like a husband and a wife, in this beautiful, loving relationship in our home. We're not mourning the destruction of a building. We're mourning the destruction of a home. Now we've lost something that's so special. So the external, and that's always the danger with external, is that the external becomes the end unto itself. Instead of focusing on what's really important, the fact that we're not eating meat, we're not drinking wine, and we're not bathing for pleasure, and all these things are to remind us that there's something broken here. Something broken, that something has to be fixed, that something has to be repaired. And we can do it. We can do it. But only if the light bulb wants to change. We have to take the time to experience the fact that we are distant. And most people don't know. The Gemara and Baba Basra says that they were Mevata Megillas Tainus. Why? Because just like needle in dead flesh doesn't have any feeling, we don't feel anymore. We don't feel tragedy, we don't feel happiness. This was Rosh Ben Gamliel. One generation after the Churban. And year goes by, years go by, generations go by, decades, hundreds of years, centuries, millennia. We don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Where's our frame of reference? So we're supposed to take out a week. And focus on the fact that we're missing something. That our parents sent us to our room because they're disappointed in our behavior. Yeah. He's just waiting for us to be able to come back. And for us to be able to come back, all it takes is for us to want it. We have to want it. Easier said than done. Because we all get busy. I was speaking once in a school in someplace, and a kid asked me, Rabbi, who wanted to be smart, he says, Rabbi, we've waited for the Messiah for so long. When is he actually going to come? I said, do you want the Messiah to come? So he was like, yeah. I said, really? I said, you're getting ready to take your road test. You're ready to go to university. You're ready to, go on with your life. You want to quit everything and come to Israel? Build the temple? Bring offerings? Yeah, is that what you want to do? So the kid looked down and I said, that's why Mashiach hasn't come. So we don't really want him. And when we want it, first step is the wanting. The first step is I can be doing better than this. So right now it's a great time. For the most part, Arabs aren't stabbing Jews in Jerusalem. You can go, and you don't have to be afraid that you're going to get stabbed. I went with my wife once to the old city, and there had been a bunch of stabbings. My wife was nervous. I said, you don't have to worry. Orlofskys don't die in dramatic ways. We don't get stabbed. There's no car accidents. There's no, we get slow, debilitating diseases, heart disease, diabetes. We slowly ebb away. You understand? We just fade off, We don't go in big explosions, No one's going to stab me, But people were really worried. I remember there was a time when there was the shootings all over the Shtachim. You drive down the road and people were shooting at buses and shooting at things. I remember the bus bombings. I remember all these things that were going on. So right now, people aren't trying to kill us. That's good. It's good. A lot of nice restaurants, get a lot of takeout stuff now, a lot of great products. Life's great. Yeah, we're making do. Like needle and dead flesh. We don't sense that we're missing anything. We don't sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is upset with us. We get sent to our room, and we got our computer, and we got our our games and our toys, and got a little fridge there with stuff. We're fine. We'll sit in our room. And we don't understand that we're missing. And that's where we are during this week. The 9 days, Tisha Yomim, Ma'atim B'Simcha, the saddest time on the Jewish calendar. If I end with, really the story of Rabbi Lau, who was a child in the Holocaust, and he says the only way you could live through all that is to freeze. You had to freeze. How could you live? All the pain and all the suffering and all the starvation, all the terrible things. You're a child. He says you have to lock yourself away. And he says when liberation came, he says the army psychologist said, if you don't get these kids to care, they're going to die just from lack of caring. And a Rav brought us into a room and talked to us about what we'd gone through, and about our parents and everything that we were, and nothing. And finally he said in a loud voice, and now, Kinderlach, now you can cry. And a little girl sobbed. A little boy began to weep. And soon the whole room was filled with crying children. And Rabbi Lau said, when I knew I could cry, I knew I would live. Because without caring, without interest, there's nothing. We're in Gullus. We don't have a bias. We're not living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that intimate relationship. That's the tragedy. That's the geula that we're davening for, that we should be able to get back to where we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be. That the Jewish people can have dignity and the greatness that is inside of you. Moshe Che told the story that when he was a little boy, he went to the zoo and the lion roared and he got scared. And he said to the zookeeper, can he break out of his cage? And the zookeeper said, yes, but don't worry, he doesn't know it. And he looked at us and said, that's every one of us. We could bring Mashiach, we could get ourselves out of this. But first we have to sense that we're missing something. And that's what the 9 days are for. And who knows? Could be, comes the next podcast. Mashiach will already be here. He'll be at Beis HaMikdash. We won't have to have a Tisha B'Av. There is no Tisha B'Av this year. It comes out on Shabbos. Yeah, we're celebrating the 10th of Av. It's pushed off. But the actual Tisha B'Av, we're going to eat meat, we're going to drink wine, we're going to celebrate. It could be that way every year on Tisha B'Av. It could be Mamash Yontif. All we have to want is to understand it and appreciate it and want to be close to Hashem the way it's supposed to be. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more, you can go to RabbiOrlofsky.com, my website. You can make a comment, find out about upcoming events. And if you want to sponsor an episode, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast and click on Sponsor an Episode. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.